Okay, that's probably Angie. So, are we live? Are we live? Are we live?
Testing. 1, 1, 1, 2.
Now wait for it to pull up.
Check, check, check.
I think some drop frames again. I have to figure out why it's doing that. There it is. Cool. Okay. Hey, folks. Just give us a second here. We're about to start the podcast for How the Frack We Got Here. So just bear with us just for a few minutes.
Una momento, por favor.
Okay. I think it's everybody. All right. So let's just go ahead and get into this. So today's date, May the 4th. May the 4th be with you, 2019, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do go into the last week's events and also try to make sense of it all. Before I do get started, I do have to sit there and say this is an adult podcast, which means that things of adult language and things of adult content may be said, so viewer discretion is advised. Please take the necessary 3 seconds to make that adjustment, and there we go. So, for everybody still here, welcome. Not a lot to go over this week, but we're going to get going through to it anyway. The first thing we're going to go into, honestly, is some new instances. Basically, a cop was brought to justice, and not in the way we intended.
Tragic shooting that did not have to happen and should not have happened, and our hearts go out to her family and friends. On behalf of our entire office who put so much into this case, I want the family to know how sorry we are about what occurred. We believe the jury carefully reviewed the extensive evidence and made the correct decision. This was a challenging case with limited video evidence and only 2 witnesses of the actual shooting. We worked very hard to collect all the evidence, interview all the witnesses, conduct every relevant test, and retain superb experts. It does not give us pleasure to call out police wrongdoing, but when it occurs, it is our job to let the public know, and in extreme cases, to bring charges and prosecution. Today and over the last year, we have done our job and done it well. This is a solid jury verdict, and we believe it will be upheld on appeal. Initially, there were mistakes, both by the Minneapolis police and the BCA. When we raised those issues, Minneapolis police cooperated and did their job. And the lead investigative agency was the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. And when I brought to the attention of its leader and the Commissioner of Public Safety, 2 new agents were assigned, including Brent and Michelle, and they did a great job. People make mistakes. We work with the Minneapolis police and the BCA all the time. We've had several officer-involved shootings since that time. I'm pleased to report that both MPD and BCA have done an exemplary job. We hope the problems that we've had in the past are over, and they continue to do the good job they've done recently.
Okay, so for all those that are wondering what just actually occurred, well, it was very simple.
At this hour,
pretty much Justine Rusick, for anybody who doesn't know, remember who that is? That was the Australian woman that was actually shot by Officer, I believe his name, let me make sure I got this right, Mohammed Noor, who was a former Minneapolis police officer that happened to shoot a woman who was basically calling in for a 911 call. So, the only difference is with a lot of these police shootings that we've seen is that the officer themselves is Caucasian and the victim is black. However, in this case, the officer, Mohammed Noor, is black, and of course, Justine Rusick is white, visiting from Australia. So after this, I guess this lengthy trial, they decided to go ahead and charge him with third-degree murder and manslaughter. Obviously, he was also dismissed from the Minneapolis Police Department. So, for a lot of you guys, you're probably wondering what's the difference. Well, I want to bring up this other story that also happened sometime last year by the name of Stephen Moore. For Stephen Clark, I should say. For all those that don't remember, Stephen Clark was actually the young man who was actually shot in his own backyard by officers who swore he had a gun but only had a cell phone. So the only thing I wanted to point out was just the narrative that each of these stories tell, which I'll go ahead and play this one.
Out overnight after the district attorney said the two officers involved in his shooting will not be criminally charged.
Family members and their supporters promising their fight for justice is not over. ABC's Zachary Keish has more.
Our duty to fight for our freedom.
Demonstrators say they want justice, but the district attorney is saying it wasn't a crime.
Show me your hands. Good.
This morning, no criminal charges for two officers who shot and killed Stephon Clark, an unarmed black man, last year in Sacramento.
Was a crime committed? But when we look at the facts and the law, and we follow our ethical responsibilities, the answer to that question is no.
March 18th, 2018, cops responding to a vandalism call. Police helicopters already hovering above begin to zero in and track Clark. Officers on the ground confronting the 22-year-old in a backyard, later determined to be his grandparents' home. The officers arguing they thought the cell phone in his hand was a gun.
Something in his hands, it looked like a gun from our perspective.
Shooting and killing the father of two. The investigation found officers muted their body cameras multiple times and waited about 7 minutes before performing CPR.
We can't go over there to get you help unless we know you don't have the weapon.
No pulse. No breathing?
No. The DA says Clark ignored commands and took a shooting stance, so the cops were justified. The Sacramento police chief apologizing to the Clark family.
I couldn't imagine the pain that they're in.
Stephen Clark's mother devastated by the announcement.
They executed my son. They executed him in my mom's backyard. We're not going to accept that.
And Clark's fiance fighting back tears.
My boys, Aiden and Cairo, have to grow up without their father. And I have to continue on as a single parent.
The shooting led to protests on the street.
Black Lives Matter!
And disruptions in local government. While the DA's decision is final, the Sacramento mayor says the community still has its own questions about whether Clark's killing was justified.
Was the outcome wrong? Was the outcome unacceptable? The answer to both questions is yes.
The Attorney General is doing their own review completely separate from the district attorney. Now, Sacramento's police chief said yesterday changes have been made as a result of this case to foot pursuit and body camera policies, but still no real changes to the use of force policies that continue to disproportionately affect these communities of color.
Okay, so the reason why I wanted to play both of those was basically because the earlier ruling of Mohammed Noor that came out earlier this week seems to bring up a sort of narrative that I just happen to see whenever it comes to police shootings. Like myself, I've said many times, we've already seen multiple African-American men who were gunned down by police who have yet to be brought to trial, but either that the DA has refused or not willing to press charges, or that the grand jury decided not to indict. So a lot of you are probably wondering, what is the difference between this case and this case? And a lot of you already know the difference. And I hate to say it, but it just seems to be that if the victim isn't a certain skin color, it just seems that the narrative is told differently. Because you saw the DA for the city of Minneapolis, I should say. You saw the DA for the city of Sacramento. Two different victims, two different narrations, two different outcomes, but the same action. So, I mean, take it what you will from me. I mean, this just makes it just makes us, for those who feel like me and, of course, Thomas in the background here, and we always felt like the police will always treat us like target practice. And I would implore people who usually view this podcast, I mean, tell us differently. Because from what we see, and like I said, comparing two different cases, you've seen where one is they decided to make sure that this man served time for what he did. And on the other hand, you've seen two individuals firing multiple shots and swear up and down they saw something. Two different narratives, two different outcomes. But it only seems to me it only changes when it's the victim. But again, we still hope that things will change, but it's just like when you see stories like this, it just makes you wonder how far things are really going to be as far as when they go or how they change or things of that nature. And honestly, if you're like me, you're probably wondering that every day if you're going to be able to come back home. I mean, it's a thought that goes through every black guy's mind. I'm just going to be honest about that. But moving right along, aside from that, other things that have happened, and of course, President Trump, who's been in the news twice this week, one because we're just going to call it another position to add to the pile of obstruction of justice because, well, he basically did this.
Issues that came up in the Mueller report with Mr. Putin today?
We discussed it. He actually sort of smiled when he said something to the effect that it started off as a mountain and it ended up being a mouse. But he knew that because he knew there was no collusion whatsoever. So pretty much that's what it was.
Did you tell him not to meddle, Mr. President? Did you tell him not to meddle in the next election?
Excuse me. I'm answering this question. You are very rude. So we had a good conversation about many different things. Okay?
Did you tell him not to meddle in the next election?
We didn't discuss that. Really, we didn't discuss it. We discussed 5 or 6 things. We also we went into great detail on various things, especially, I would say, the nuclear, especially maybe Venezuela. We talked about North Korea at great length, and pretty much that's it. Also discussed trade. We intend to do a lot of trade with Russia. We do some right now. It's up a little bit. But he'd like to do trade, and we'd like to do trade. And getting along with Russia and China, getting along with all of them is a very good thing. Not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing. Getting along with other countries, including your country, by the way. But getting along with countries is a good thing. And we want to have good relationships with every country.
Mr. President, should Mueller testify?
Okay, so usually from that garbage dump so far, and before I get into Trump, sorry, Derek, I just saw your comment, which I'm glad because, you know, you're from Minneapolis, you can tell us, we do know what's going on, BCA is full of it, the DA is always full of crap, so it pretty much adds to what I'm saying as far as the narrative, as far as that goes. And yeah, I was going to point that out too, Derek, that Justine Rizek's family, who lives in Australia, actually got $20 million from the city of Minneapolis for wrongful death, while Philando Castillo's family only got $800,000. You're exactly right about that. And of course, you know, as Derek pointed out, St. Paul police are very brutal here. So I get that wholeheartedly, and thank you for your comment on that. But to get back to Agent Orange, here's the thing of why I say this is another obstruction of justice charge. Because basically, there was an investigation, as we all know about the Mueller report, which is still public. That is still redacted, but you can still read. Where it goes over for the fact that the Mueller report pretty much says that there's a lot of smoke, that they couldn't ultimately implicate the Trump organization knew about the Russian interference or colluded with Russia, but it also says it couldn't exonerate them either, which means that there is a lot of smoke right there that could still be investigated by Congress. With that being said, you wouldn't think that, you know, Trump would turn around and speak with the central point of the investigation about the investigation. That's like going up to your husband explaining about the dinner plans that you're not supposed to talk about. And it's amazing to me where, again, this is the first time that Trump took Putin's advice over his own network, as we all remember well and tidy, that when every agency that Congress had said that Russian investigation, or I should say Russian meddling has happened, he goes to Putin and goes, Putin told me nothing's going on. I believe him over my own people. So we really shouldn't be surprised now that he's turning around and talking to Putin about the very same thing. Of course Putin's going to turn around and say it's a mountain to a mole. The investigation is about him. That alone should tell you everything that you want to know. But again, this goes back to what I said before about about Trump, that he is a compromised president, a compromised, purchased, bought, and paid for president. Not only by Russians, but by the Saudis as well, because when New York Times journalist Jamal Khashoggi was murdered, It is amazing to me how he believed the Saudi family had nothing to do with it, when in Tice, the CIA and almost every intelligence network had already concluded the prince ordered the hit. But again, Trump's bought and paid for, so we really should be surprised about what he'll do. But I just found it amazing to an inactive Congress that they have this much amount of evidence that they should go up against and begin the impeachment trials against Trump off the simple fact of how he is acting alone. But then again, when you have the Senate that's pretty much being the blockade for it, we really shouldn't be surprised by that. Although going on from there, like I said, there was also another thing that happened in Congress today. Another thing that happened in Congress. William Barr. William Barr actually testified. Well, he was supposed to testify twice. He did testify once, and well, for lack of better words, it didn't go in his favor. I'll play the clip of this before we get to the next one.
Ford and Mr. Cohen were told by Trump's personal attorney they'd be taken care of if they did not cooperate. You said that the president was fully cooperating. Is there a conflict there? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. Do you think it's fully cooperating to instruct a former aide to tell the Attorney General to unrecuse himself, shut down the investigation, and declare the president did nothing wrong?
I don't think, well, obviously, since I didn't find it was obstruction, I felt that the evidence could not support an obstruction.
I'm asking if that's fully cooperating. I'm not asking you if that's obstruction. Is that fully cooperating?
Yeah, he fully cooperated.
So by instructing a former aide to tell the Attorney General to unrecuse himself, shut down the investigation, and declare the president did nothing wrong, that's fully cooperating.
Where is that in the report?
That is on Volume 2, page 5. On June 19, 2017, the president dictated a message for Lewandowski to deliver to Sessions. The message said that Sessions should publicly announce that notwithstanding his recusal from the Russian investigation, the investigation is very unfair to the president. The president did nothing wrong.
Right.
Okay, so cooperating?
Well, firstly, asking Sessions to unrecuse himself, we do not think is obstruction.
And declare the president did nothing wrong. I'm not asking you if it's obstruction. Is it fully cooperating?
Well, I don't know if that declares the president did nothing wrong, although the president, in terms of collusion, did nothing wrong. Isn't that correct?
Well, collusion is not a crime. It's the obstructing. But is that fully cooperating to say that?
Well, I don't see any conflict between that and fully cooperating with the investigation.
So, usually in the Trump playbook, as you just saw, William Barr didn't answer any questions. He didn't answer anything clearly. He answered a question with a question, and he did a lot of... I thought I was watching The Walking Dead for a second after that. The level of just... the honest level that he had, that he wouldn't answer a question. Now, obviously, these are easy questions because they are reading from the very same report he redacted once he received it from Robert Mueller. So it's amazing to me how an attorney general can't answer questions about his own report that he gave to Congress 48 hours after he actually got the unredacted report, because he was bumbling and stumbling all over it, in which he did go on to admit that he did not actually review the evidence given by Mueller, but pretty much made his assumptions. So it wasn't a very good day for Barr as he testified in front of the House, and he was asked to testify in front of the House again, and well, this happened.
House Democrats
aiming their anger at an empty chair rather than the Attorney General.
Mr. Barr's moment of accountability will come soon enough.
One lawmaker even bringing a bucket of KFC.
What is the message you're trying to send?
The message is that Bill Barr is a chicken.
William Barr did not appear because he did not want to answer questions from staff lawyers on the Judiciary Committee. Democrats had made that highly unusual demand. Top Republicans deriding the whole thing as theater.
Really? I mean, can you honestly say you're serious about this, or is this like a circus and a political tool because you lost?
Barr now runs the risk of being held in contempt of Congress for not cooperating with lawmakers' requests. Although even if that happens, it wouldn't have much teeth. Just ask former Attorney General Eric Holder, who was also held in contempt during the Obama administration. For Barr, it's not the only flashpoint after this explosive comment from the House Speaker.
The Attorney General of the United States of America was not telling the truth to the Congress of the United States. That's a crime.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi is referring to an exchange several weeks ago when Barr was asked about reports the special counsel's team was worried about how Barr described their findings.
Do you know what they're referencing with that?
No, I don't. I suspect that they probably wanted, more put out.
But it turns out days earlier, Barr had received this letter from Robert Mueller expressing his concerns. The Justice Department calling Pelosi's comment a baseless attack that's reckless, irresponsible, and false. The president late tonight on Fox News.
Nobody has ever done what I've done. I've given total transparency. It's never happened before like this.
So Congress shouldn't be
looking anymore. This is all. It's done.
Also late tonight, a source familiar with the negotiations tells NBC News Democrats are in talks with Robert Mueller's team directly to have him testify, but nothing's been nailed down yet.
So the weird part about it is, and I know you're probably wondering, why in the world did Church's Chicken not get in on this? Why did it gotta be KFC? The senator from Tennessee was the one that actually brought it in. This was actually supposed to be the second day where William Barr was supposed to testify in front of the House, which is mostly controlled by Democrats, refused to show up, and so the representative from Tennessee decided to bring, as you saw, a bucket of chicken, and he actually has a little chicken plaque too that he brought too, where it basically shows that he called William Barr a chicken. Now, it is great political theater, and yes, it makes kind of a mockery of our system as it is. Even our system's a joke. But the funny part about the whole thing was that it got the attention. It's like William Barr won't come up and testify for his own report. That alone should tell you something, that he himself literally is full of it. At the same time, where Nancy Pelosi says he lied to Congress, in a sense he actually did. What they're referring to is that during William Barr's confirm meeting, I should say, when he went in front of the House, and they were asking him, while Mueller was in the middle of this investigation, they asked him, if you are pressed, will you fully deliver the report as it is to the public? In which William Barr did in his Walking Dead stumbling, I will do the best I can to what the law will allow me to do. And we knew now that was BS. Because as it stands, we've learned many a things since the Mueller report came out. Number one, it was in the hands of White House officials before it was released to the public. And the White House officials got the unredacted report. As you already know, we've always got we've gotten the redacted report. So White House officials were able to see the report long before anybody else was. That right there is an obstruction of justice charge. William Barr made a speech before actually releasing the report to basically exonerate President Trump. Again, obstruction charge number 2 should have been called upon that. And finally, he did lie to Congress in saying that he would be transparent and actually would explain the report as he received it. So 1, 2, and 3. 3 times William Barr has obstructed justice as an attorney general, which is all the more reason why he is trying to be brought in. Now, they do have it to a point. If you are summoned by Congress to testify, they can send the sergeant at arms to literally enforce that rule. Now, when they try to use the Eric Holder angle, keep in mind Eric Holder actually did come, even though he was in contempt. They didn't send the sergeant of arms to go after him. He voluntarily came into Congress after he was held in contempt. So, in the event that Mr. Nadler decides to go ahead and hold Mr. Barr in contempt, he can use the sergeant at arms to forcibly have him brought to Congress. It's almost like a court subpoena. You cannot ignore a summon to Congress. You do have to show up. That is part of the job description. And William Barr right now knows that he is under the gun. And chances are, to be quite honest, I would not be surprised if he resigns in the next month or so. Only because he's done his job. He's covered up to as much as he can to basically dull the narrative about the report, as Nader and the rest of the Democrats try to get an unredacted copy, which only seems to be sitting with 2 people, the White House and the Justice Department. aside from everybody else, we still have what I call the Barr report, which in itself, if you ever read the 440 page plus page document, I have. There is a lot of smoke there, honestly. Now, will they go into it or not? That's going to be an interesting thing. And also, the other thing that they're not saying is that Congress has also decided to bring in Mueller, which at this point, there's not an answer on whether or not he will testify before Congress. However, if he is summoned before Congress, there is a chance that he will go forward, and that just opens up a whole other can of worms because Mueller will be asked about his findings. So, about to be an interesting day on Capitol Hill, but we now know at this point William Barr is a Trump man because he already sat there and said that Trump was exonerated without looking at the evidence. Obstruction of justice everywhere. But moving right along, guys, there's also another reason why Trump was in the news today, basically because of this little tidbit.
Seniors, the timing could not be better. Entering the job market with the lowest unemployment rate since 1969 and wages now rising. Stephen Rossi is graduating from American University with a business degree and will soon start at IBM.
I've known since late October, and it made my senior year totally stress-free.
Because you knew you had something lined up?
Absolutely.
Rachel Stefano will be teaching math in Texas.
I feel excited. I feel like the economy's at a really good place right now, and that makes me more optimistic to be going into the working world.
It's a good time to be job hunting. Companies added 76,000 business and professional jobs in April. There was also strong hiring in construction and healthcare. The president today was quick to take credit.
Our country is doing well. Never probably has done as well as it's doing right now economically.
The economy has been improving steadily for the past 10 years, with the unemployment rate dropping most dramatically under President Obama and continuing with Mr. Trump. Still, most analysts say last year's tax cuts did provide a shot in the arm.
I think the president deserves some credit for the better economic numbers. Certainly some of his policies have led to an upshift in hiring and perhaps an upshift in capital spending by businesses.
The question is, how long will it last? Most economists no longer expect a recession this year, but many wonder whether the effects from last year's tax cuts might wear off.
A lot of you guys that are probably sitting there wondering, I'm calling bullshit on that. Well, let me explain about that one too. Because yes, there was an economic boom, but it was only in specific job sectors, mostly IT-related areas, mostly healthcare and things of that nature. Healthcare, IT, and construction were probably three areas. Now, those are three sectors, not counting the industry and service sectors, in which a lot of us, industry, customary, hotel, things of that nature, were still unaffected, but they were still hiring. Now at this point, I really wouldn't get too excited about the job market because if you haven't noticed under Trump's administration, that the simple fact of the matter is that it's been completely volatile. It's never been stable. So although this might be a small blip on the radar screen, let's not also forget that November of last year was also a hiring spike, followed by December and January slow slumps. So forgive me for saying this, but I don't think that this April boom is going to mean anything because come June and July, we could be right back where we started. So our next to last story that we're going to go after is basically one that I thought was interesting and I was also disappointed by it. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about.
Some of the nation's most divisive voices silenced online. Facebook banning several prominent extremist groups, including conspiracy theorist Alex Jones of InfoWars and Louis Farrakhan, the controversial Nation of Islam leader who has a history of anti-Semitic language. It's the social media company's latest effort to stop the spread of misinformation and radical behavior across its platforms, which includes Instagram. Facebook labeling the groups dangerous, telling NBC News in a statement, "We've always banned individuals or organizations that promote or engage in violence and hate, regardless of ideology. The process of evaluating potential violators is extensive, and it's what led us to our decision to remove these accounts today." The far-right political site InfoWars, led by Jones, faces the harshest ban, Facebook and Instagram pledging to remove any post containing InfoWars content, unless that post explicitly condemns the radical site. Jones, most known for peddling conspiracies about the Sandy Hook Elementary shooting, falsely calling the massacre a hoax, a claim he later blamed on psychosis.
They didn't just ban me, they just defamed us.
NBC News reached out to Louis Farrakhan but did not get a response. Earlier this week, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced a redesign of its site.
We're working hard to completely remove groups if they exist primarily to violate our policies or do things that are dangerous.
Twitter, YouTube, and Apple have already banned Jones and InfoWars, and even Facebook briefly banned the two back in February 2018. Facebook's new ban comes as the company and other social media platforms face pressure to better police their content and eliminate online hate speech that could inspire violent acts.
You're a little sensitive one. He loved his teddy bear.
Pretty much, guys, from lack of sense of that one, as I said before, Facebook has decided, or I should say Lord Zuckerberg has decided that that certain hate speech is going to be banned. Alex Jones, I can understand, because anybody that's watched at least 30 seconds of his videos knows this man is literally off his rocker. He is Bill O'Reilly if Bill O'Reilly was more extreme. He would basically be Sean Hannity if Sean Hannity basically had Trump credentials to say and do whatever he wants. Basically, InfoWars is what Fox News would be if Fox News was really not, if Fox News feet was not held to the fire, really. And I get that to a certain extent. Just simple fact of the matter is just that he does spew hate speech. Everything is a conspiracy to him. The Sandy Hook shooting, the shooting at Paradise in Florida, basically every policy that Barack Obama as president, when he put out, it just makes no sense. Everything to him was always, they're out to get us, it's a screaming, yelling. I can understand from Alex Jones being banned because he's he's basically what Trump would like to be if he had Trump's protection. Milos Yunus, for a lot of you guys that don't know, he was basically, as they call a career troll, but he trolled everybody and was really saying a lot of bigoted and racist views as far as that goes. And eventually he needed to be gone too, just because, like I said, he was nothing more than hate speech. Now, I'm indifferent when it comes to Louis Farrakhan. He was the former head of the Nation of Islam. In my opinion, his views were not hate speech. Now, he did have some opinions of the Jewish people that could have been seen as anti-Semitic. No different than a certain representative that's in the Democratic Congress right now, which I fully agree with her when she sat there and said there are pro-Israel groups out there that are paying these congressmen to basically funnel things toward their supposed Holy Land. She said that, and it was immediately labeled anti-Semitic, and I'm like, how? She told the truth. Now, in the same way, Louis Farrakhan, he only speaks in a way to where it's supposed to be empowerment. Personally, I have no problem with that. He is merely reciting his free speech, and he's owned every consequence that's come forward. I don't think what he is saying is hate speech, but again, in the world of Facebook, you can have all the hentai porn you can have on that site, nobody blinks an eye. Say one wrong thing, and all of a sudden you get banned. And yet we gave up on MySpace. Tom gave us everything, and we turned our backs on him. We are so sorry, Tom. We should have never deserted you. But my thing is, like I said, if it wasn't for free speech, shows like mine wouldn't be available. You wouldn't have a guy like me speaking from his living room, going over news cycles on a weekly basis, and basically giving my opinion and asking you guys to look into it as well. That's free speech. We all know that, and I said this many times, especially to my compadre right behind me, that I've always sat there and said, whatever I say, whatever it's recorded or out loud or in public, I'll never be afraid to stand on it. If you said it, own it, and deal with it, because that's the beauty of free speech. Free speech means I could say whatever it is I want to say, but I am not absolved from the actions and consequences that follow. So if I turn around and sit there and say at the top of my voice, all women ain't shit, I accept what comes with that. I do have the right to sit there and say that, but I am not absolved from the first woman that wants to lay me out because I said it. I'm not absolved from it. I have to accept the consequence. In the same sense, where I think that maybe Facebook is about to go down a very, very slippery slope where you can ban hate speech. That's fine. But once you open that door is open for all those that fall under that banner. And I think that, yes, by banning Alex Jones, banning Mila Youpos, you might wind up banning politics. You might wind up banning Libertarian, Republican, Democrat, Green Party, non-committal. You might start banning those folks because that can be seen as hate speech. You might start banning those who are for the empowerment of the black people, of Jewish people, of certain faiths and whatnot, because that can be seen as hate speech. So again, once you open that door, that is a slippery slope to go down on. And let's be honest, Zuckerberg should have been kicked out of that company a long time ago for Facebook because, well, he sold our data to everybody. But again, who's ever got MySpace right now, you better promote the shit out of it. But aside from that, guys, I usually have a feel-good story. Trying to get it to come up now, but it's kind of fighting me. But let me go ahead and say this, because, well, we'll forget that. The video's not going to work. So I'm just going to go ahead and go into it. When I usually do feel-good stories, because I always say in a world of doom and gloom, it seems that all I have is bad news or sometimes uplifting news. But we always want something that makes us feel good. You know, gives us a little bit of humanity. Lets us know that everything's going to be okay. The video I had was really about a principal who basically takes the time to read via Facebook and YouTube to all her students that actually go to her website, and encourages them to read books and to read all different types of books, not just the fiction and nonfiction, but science and things of that nature, and just expand their minds. And that's beautiful. That's wonderful that a principal will do that. That reminded me of a story that we had here in Tennessee, specifically Nashville, that the day before Friday, that our teachers had a planned strike. I won't say a strike per se, it was more like a planned call out. Well over 1,000 teachers called out, I believe it was on Thursday, which left a lot of schools short-staffed. And the teachers were basically calling out, or on strike, but basically they were doing it because, like a lot of educators in our country, they are underpaid, overworked, and bundled with classes that are too big as a ratio of student per person. And at the same time, a lot of these teachers are being asked to raise these kids, to teach these kids. You can't discipline the kid because chances are the kid might come back and shoot up the joint. You put your hands on the child, you might get fired because a parent who decided they wanted to be a parent now is going to get mad because you did their job for them. And then again, you also have those teachers that somehow don't get past these background checks and really shouldn't be teachers for the horrendous things they do to children. But that's not the point in this story. The point in this story is just that there are a lot of good teachers out there that honestly I have a high respect for educators, because anybody who decides they want to dedicate their life to teaching children the proper way and to help them become adults, in my mind, is an honor profession, and they should be paid as much. I also say in the same sense that 911 responders should be paid more, not just the fire, police, and rescue, but the 911 responders themselves should be paid more because of the service they give. All the more, I used to always say in the same place, the same way you pay a doctor, the same way you should pay those that assist the doctor. And not just in the hospital, but in the same sense. That's why I say teachers in the same sense should be paid more, should be given more breaks, should be given more federal funding, should be given student loan forgiveness if they decide to become educators. But then again, we all deserve a little student loan forgiveness, especially for those that have that. But the thing about it is, teaching profession seems to be the most overlooked yet so in demand profession out there, short of being a doctor, working at a funeral home, and working at a hospital. And I feel so sorry for these 1,000+ teachers that decided to make a decision, but a decision had to be made, because in our Nashville Board of Education, it's honestly shit. Dr. Sean Joseph was actually released, or I should say he was given his full pay to basically leave. The man was paid to leave. Keep in mind that he actually had that position for well over 8 years and did nothing. He actually gave contracts out to friends. The actual state grades across the board were dropping. The graduation rate was actually under 20%. The last time that actually happened was back in 1983 when yours truly was born. But think about that for a second. A man who had 10 years under his tenure basically ran the public education into the ground, and we just paid him his full salary just to leave. While barely probably the most paid metro education teacher probably makes barely above 40,000. Definitely under 42. Now you gotta think, for a person that's asked to come in, teach multiple classes or a single class for 8 hours a day, and deal with children and try to assist them the best way they can with lackluster conditions, terrible equipment, an education system that hasn't been adjusted since the 70s, and you're now giving them standardized tests, Common Core math, and last time I checked, you're rewriting the history books just to make sure that slavery wasn't a choice. Again, I can sit there and go on, and I know it's supposed to be a feel-good story, but again, I implore those, because I know a few of you guys on the National Board of Education watch this podcast, and I thank you. But from a person who graduated when it was actually good, get back to actually helping the students, because the students help the teachers. And once the teachers can become more involved, the students actually do better. And at the same time, actually bring back the things that actually were good for teachers. Expanding woodshop, metal shop class, expanding music programs. Stop cutting the education budget so much that it just simply seems to be, the simple fact of the matter is that this school voucher program that you're trying to put out may be the best thing smoking, but it takes away from public education systems, and it robs those that can't afford to send their children to higher education schools or private schools, because let's be honest, if you've been to Good Pasture, and not Good Pasture, but their tuition levels are about as high as college. So hey, if you can afford to send your kids, to an academy or a charter school with that type of tuition, go for it. But for the rest of us who simply cannot afford it, that is what we are fighting for. Education is valuable, people, and if you don't believe me, ask yourself how Trump got elected. But that being said, guys, that's going to be the end of this for this How the Frack We Got Here. Like I said, I know the guy behind me is about to set up for his, Thomas Reed, is about to set up for his To Be Determined podcast. So if you're wondering what that is, if I can say it without burping, To Be Determined podcast is basically a fitness podcast. If I can show you what Thomas looks like, he's basically a very fit individual. He actually likes to talk about things as far as fitness goes, and wants to give his tips as far as what you can do as far as working out, certain movements, and certain subjects that he finds near and dear his heart, as well as give his own personal testimony, which should be coming up in the next hour or so. And also from Sab's back, I do have another show that we're going to be doing on later today called Offense Podcast, in which we will talk about transgenders in sports. And it will be a call-in show because we will open the call line back up. And if you want to give your opinion about it, then we hope to hear from you. Again, that'll probably be a little bit later on tonight between 9 p.m., 10 p.m. Central Time. I'm not the only, and besides me and Thomas, we're not the only guys that actually have shows out there. My other friend of mine, DJ King Eddie Wayne on Facebook, has shows of his own. He has The Bump Down, which is a musical podcast with his music charts, knowledge, and numbers. The man does definitely know the music industry and therefore wants to be able to share his knowledge for those that are just curious or basically trying to break into it. And also, if you have music that you want it to be heard on, you can send it to him, DJ King Eddie Wayne on Facebook and YouTube, and he'll play it on The Bump Down, which he goes over what's hot on the charts and on the underground, and basically lets you know what's coming up from the ground up. He also has a Smoke of Truth, as I like to call it. The Smoke of Truth is nothing more than the check your ego at the door, no frills, just the basic center core of truth on many multiple subjects that he'll actually talk about. Would definitely recommend watching this guy because, like I said, DJ King and Wayne, very unorthodox but highly intelligent, and you should do that. Also, another friend of mine, Avon Witherspoon, actually on Facebook, has several podcasts of his own. He actually has the I Get That Reference VST, which is a mini podcast over various music, video games, and other news that you might find informative. Very interactive show. He has Rhythm This, where he reminisces over the rhythm, where he also goes over musical albums that have came out and goes to a 4-tier rating system. Also, he has Step Into the Rang, where basically if you want your music to be played on Rhythm This, please reach out to him, HT1 Westman on Facebook, in any type of format, and he'll get taken care of from there. He also has Random as Fuck, where I like to call it the pool of ratchetness we sometimes dip our toes into to get a break from life and have a little chuckle. Interactive show, because he definitely does find videos that'll make you laugh, that'll make you cry, and probably will make you say what the fuck. But again, all in good fun. All of our shows can be found where I Get That Reference, which will eventually become our Table of Bosses video vault, to where you'll be able to go back and look at all of our videos there. Also on YouTube, if you look up DJ King Eddie Wayne, if you look up I Get That Reference, if you look up How the Frack We Got Here and Off Limits Podcast, you'll find our YouTube pages to where you can like, share, and subscribe and be able to see everything there that we've done so far. And with that being said, How the Frack We Got Here is all about staying informed. Staying informed basically means not accepting everything at the ground level, really going in and doing your own research, coming back and showing somebody what you found, and hopefully inspiring them to do the same, because an uninformed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us Trump. Hope to see you guys on the To Be Turned podcast and way later, and a little bit later on the Off Limits podcast. Aside from that, guys, thank you for all for watching on the playback. Thank you for watching too, and thank you guys for all commenting. I try to catch everybody, but I did not expect that many comments to come flying at me one time. I apologize. So if you're watching this on the playback, just go ahead and respond like it's real time, because I know you Trump supporters will. But aside from that, guys, thank you all for watching. Have a good night. Peace.